This podcast is recorded on the traditional and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Coquitlam peoples.
British Columbia, I've seen your mountains high, seen your pretty rainbows and your blue crystal skies, watched your winding rivers as they flow around the bend. To me you're not a stranger, you'll always be a friend.
Coming to you from the West Coast, this is Politicos. Today is October 23rd, 2025.
I'm Scott Lunderbaum.
And I'm Ian Bushfield. Scott, do you have your Halloween costume ready yet?
I do not.
It's probably not as big of a thing for you as it is for me living in the suburbs with young kids.
Well, the neighborhood here is like absolutely packed with Halloween decorations. So, I mean, we just moved like a couple weeks ago, but like I'm expecting it's going to get pretty busy here on Halloween when that comes around.
Oh, that rules. It's so cool living in a neighborhood where we get like 400 kids at the door. It's a lot, but it's just a good vibe. And Halloween's on a Friday. I just hope it doesn't rain. I'm very excited. It's cool. We'll talk more about that next week as I'll get more and more ramped up. But we got lots to talk about today. Conservatives are dissatisfied provincially and federally, hell, even municipally, but we don't need to talk about them today. And the federal government has its new crime bill for us to get into. Support the show and help me buy candy for all the trick-or-treaters at patreon.com/politicos. Let's start here in British Columbia, where the Conservatives continue to implode. The week starts off on Monday with another resignation from the Conservative caucus. This time, MLA Amelia Boltby from Penticton Summerland has left to sit as an independent. She is now the third independent in the legislature. And if she got together with Eleanor Sturko or Jordan Keeley, they could form the fifth party.
We really need it's just like another splinter party.
We're going to talk about Centre BC in a little bit. Maybe they could join that. Boltby, for her part, said she's just been frustrated with John Rustad's approach as leadership and wanted to, go her own way. John Rustad, for his part,
how do you even
reacted.
describe this? Yeah. the exact adjectives to apply to this one are escaping me at the moment. But
CBC says...
he had a choice couple quotes on this one when describing his now former colleague's departure.
CBC says Rustad brought up concerns about Boltby's stances on various issues, as well as what he described as her health. He was then asked directly if he was talking about her mental health, and he responded, quote, "I had concerns when she's in tears. Staff are telling me that she's very confused." Some of those other issues apparently included support of Hamas. I didn't see his press conference, but I did see reporters tweeting that.
Yeah, that's one of those things that just raises a whole bunch of questions that you probably don't want to have to answer if you're the Conservative leader. Like, why was having a Hamas supporter in caucus?
Well, now we know who doesn't support democracy.
Yeah, it's exactly like that quotation we talked about from a couple weeks ago on it, where it just raises a whole bunch more questions about just what kind of caucus he's running, if it's actually true, which, yeah, I doubt it is. I'm pretty sure you could approximate the number of Hamas supporters in that caucus is just zero.
Yeah, his full quote was, "She was very uncomfortable with our position on parental rights and the changes that are needed with SOGI. She was also apparently very uncomfortable with our position on anti-Semitism and made posts supporting Hamas and their goals." So that's all something. The comments around her mental health which he doesn't say was about her mental health, but has drawn a lot of scorn with people pointing out that that's not something you should deride someone for. Obviously, feels obvious. Calling your critics crazy terrorists doesn't go over well.
Yeah, also, just not a great dynamic to have this woman is now leaving our organization. She must be crazy.
And people are
That's just a
noticing
bad line.
Yeah, people are noticing a trend where, 5 MLAs have left that caucus now, voluntarily or not. 4 of them are women. He's losing a lot of women. Now, they're, on both sides of the party there, from the far right to the moderate, but it's not a good look. Losing an MLA is never positive for a leader, but it does happen from time to time. But then to shoot yourself in the face like this, it's just a wildly unprofessional response. Also,
worth mentioning that just 2 weeks ago, her home was attacked. As far as we know, there's no connection here, but there are certainly entirely understandable reasons to be somewhat distressed. And it's really bad form to then leverage that to try and make a problem of someone leaving your caucus go away.
Yeah, there's multiple reports of rocks being thrown at her constituency office, as well as disturbances at her home, which were condemned widely across the spectrum, as they should be. But yeah, it's a wild way to see someone out the door of your party. Unsurprisingly, people in the Conservative Party aren't happy with this handling. That includes a seeming majority of the leadership of the Conservative Party, that is the executive board of the party, who has penned an open letter saying, John Rustad, it's time to step aside. To which he said no.
Yeah, the writing's just on the wall at this point, and he is just refusing to read it here because, when your own party board says we've completely lost confidence, that's pretty unrecoverable. Things have to get to a real bad point where it's there, and there is just no putting the pieces back together on this one, is there?
Yeah, I don't see what his path forward is. He's reportedly through Jazz Johal's Twitter, thinking he has a way to remove the board instead, the management committee. These are people he handpicked last year, as others have pointed out, for the party leadership, and managed to have them win all the seats. So I don't know who his allies left are. It's a dwindling number.
Might just be his chief of staff at this point.
Officially, it's everyone until it's no one. We've been toying around with it and slacking in DMs about what is this analogous to? Is it like the Baker's Dozen taking down Carol James, but the MLAs haven't fully come public against Rustad yet? Or is it when Stockwell Day's fortunes as conservative, as a Canadian Alliance leader started to be numbered and the Sharks started circling there? I don't know. I think each collapse of a leadership is a little bit unique and different. This one's just coming from all sides, as he seems to have no clue how to get along with anyone. And it seemed like I think the only way they had to avoid this was by winning the last election. And without that, there's nothing.
That definitely would have helped, but they are also within, or not within spin distance of winning power on that one. There is a case where a more skillful leader, could have kept the caucus's eyes focused on the prize, really just worked on doing the opposition work on this. Would have taken some skillful leadership to navigate the wide range of opinions in caucus and keep everyone going, but I think a talented political leader could have done that. It wasn't structurally guaranteed that things would fracture if the Conservatives just came in a couple seats shy of winning the election. But one thing's for sure, the longer this goes on, the more likely that that's going to continue to break apart and the party's just going to implode before it gets a chance to run another election.
Yeah.
But, it's going to be fun when we're on our fourth brand for the opposition party in as many elections.
I've joked that, Kevin Falcon is still leader of BC United, and all he needs to do is just open the door to the management committee of the Conservative Party of BC, as many MLAs as want across the floor, and he could genuinely have the last laugh, resurrecting his party. He'd probably have to agree to step aside and have a leadership race, which would be for its better part, but
BC United's dead. It just apparently doesn't entirely know that yet, or hasn't shed its last breath. But that thing's not getting resurrected. Now, the zombie of it could, maybe take down another one, but yeah, I'm gonna say with extreme confidence that the next election is not going to result in any BC United seats.
No, I think it is worth noting that I believe from the annual reports we have most recently, BC Conservatives have more debt than BC United does at this point, because one of them contested an election and the other didn't, but one has a fundraising apparatus and the other doesn't. And it's, I don't know. It's just all good news for David Eby at this point, who was looking at this narrow, uncertain, bare majority of the legislature to now he has an 8-seat lead over the opposition. And, in theory, the Conservatives could team up with the Greens and 1BC and the Independents. But the math gets harder on that side. And, we can see that with things like this second attempt by 1BC to bring forward a wildly out of left field bill that
I'm pretty sure it's out of right field on this one.
Yeah, right, definitely right field, where they wanted to ban land acknowledgements in schools and public bodies. Party of free speech needs to tell people what they can't say. And it got voted down in first reading, just like their anti-trans bill did a couple weeks ago. This time, the Conservatives largely voted against it, with MLAs Harman Bangu and Heather Maws from the Conservatives, as well as Jordan Keeley, the Independent, joining the two 1BC MLAs. So I think the most interesting thing about this bill dying, which is only, I think, the third bill that's ever lost on first reading, because usually it's just fine, we'll debate it later. It's interesting the Conservatives had this as a free vote, and that Bangu and Maws broke ranks with the majority there.
Well, I think it's a little more interesting that there weren't more people who voted with them.
Yeah. I mean, three have already left.
Yeah, but that's a position I could see not being entirely absent among the Conservative caucus, and I would have, if you just asked me what the vote total would have been, I probably would have guessed a bigger split on it.
Fair. It's notable the Conservative House Leader, Aliyah Warbus, harshly condemned this bill, herself being, an Indigenous woman in that caucus. She's also been quite critical of the reactionary side of the party, and she's another one I could see not lasting in that caucus too long. But at this point, I don't know who lasts in that caucus, right?
Well, it would be good for the party if John Rust has the next one out. Although, just at least step down rather than quit the party. But yeah, it would not surprise me if more of them don't come forward. But seriously, at this point, the caucus needs to get their act together and actually show a little bit of political courage and force him out rather than continuing this death by 1,000 cuts. Unless they all want to be brushing up on their 1BC or starting their 1BC nomination packets for next time when the party falls apart and everything moves over to a new brand.
I mean, maybe Rustad has convinced them that David Eby is on the verge of calling an election literally this weekend, as Joe Hall is reporting that Rustad has also told his caucus.
Oh, come on. That's
hey,
so desperate.
It would be a way to save John Rustad's job as leader and David Eby's, because, David Eby is facing his own challenges next month at the NDP convention, where it sounds from the rumors I'm hearing like his own team is a little bit concerned about how well he's going to do. It'll be very funny if at Christmas the senior party leader in the legislature is Emily Lowen. I guess she's not in the legislature, but of the three main.
And
God, the senior party leader will be Dallas Brody.
I was just going to say, yeah, the person who would have been in the leadership job the longest would be Brody at that point.
Fun times in British Columbia. Centre BC is a party that exists. It was formed by Karen Kirkpatrick in the aftermath of the last election, where she was really frustrated by Kevin Falcon's sabotage of BC United, and she launched a thing she thinks people are asking for.
I like that the most you can say about it is it exists. Like, that was the big lead-in to describing the party.
Yeah. It is more active than BC United. It has put out...
but that's such a low bar, though. I'd honestly forgotten Centre BC was still around.
It gets mentioned every once in a while, primarily, I think, because it seems like the fit for Eleanor Sturko and I guess Boltby now to go to. But
I don't.
Even then, yeah. I find it very funny because they dropped in my inbox a press release, and I'm throwing them a bone and telling you about this press release. They released 5 conditions for why they would support a northern pipeline. No one asked, but thanks for answering.
Really trying to capture that Christy Clark magic, which I at the time don't remember the 5 conditions being this huge political win for her.
It was
at most stopped the bleeding on issues around pipelines and kind of just stabilized them a bit in BC. But it was, it's not some grand moment that a party looking to bring back the glory of that kind of politics and government would be the thing to grab onto.
Yeah, for those who've been following along for a while or haven't, I guess, in 2016, 2017, the big political debate was the Kinder Morgan pipeline, now Trans Mountain pipeline, that was going to come or be doubled from the oil sands to Vancouver. And the NDP were kind of wishy-washy in 2013 until Adrian Dix just randomly at one press conference said, "We're against this." And the whole team went, "Oh, I guess we're against this now." And since then, the NDP has been against the Trans Mountain pipeline. And so John Horgan, in the lead up to the 2017 election, was taking strong stance on this. And there was a lot of debate over it, right? There's support from the building side and the, economic development side. But then there's fear from the environmental and the Indigenous rights. So Christy Clark tries to walk the balance, and she says, we have 5 conditions. And if those are met, we'll support it. And the conditions are an environmental review process, marine and land oil spill prevention and recovery plans. That's 2 separate ones. Meeting Aboriginal title issues and treaty issues. And BC gets its fair share. Centre BC, for its 5 conditions
does the same
for the
thing.
northern one, Indigenous consent and co-ownership, BC Energy Future Fund, safety and climate guardrails, job skills and procurement for British Columbians, and a legal pathway and full transparency, which is, the last one's a little bit different, but the rest, are all a modernized version of what Christy Clark was talking about. I do love this bit in here that BC should get 15% of the royalties of the oil flowing through it, as well as 50 cents per barrel at the terminal. Just, it's a toll. We should toll oil that goes through our province. It's cool. I don't I don't know what to do with this, right? I appreciate that they're trying.
Yeah, but also, like, if you are trying to get a party off the ground, if the thing you probably shouldn't be wasting your time on is writing policy backgrounders for stuff and actually, go out there, do the organizing, build the fundraising apparatus, you, rather than putting together detailed policy packets, because for better or worse, and I think we both prefer if politics worked that way, where it was just one big nerdy policy debate, but that's not actually how you do it, and nobody's going to get excited about a new party because they have a view on whether the pipeline should just merely meet or should exceed the CSA Z662 standard, which they call out in this. Like, nobody cares about that.
Scott, I'm not going to talk about them if they're having kitchen table meetings and fundraising. I'm going to talk about them when they have nerdy policy things. So I'm going to try and make politics be the way I want it to be, even if it isn't.
Yeah. But yeah, these days politics is in large part about how you generate attention and stuff. And, I would be shocked if anyone else in any, podcast media or anything else was actually took this and ran with it as a discussion. Like, you need to, particularly for a young upstart party, you actually need to generate some conflict and draw eyeballs. And the put out a rehashed version of a Christy Clark policy from a decade ago ain't going to do that.
It's Center BC. Being controversial is the antithesis of their purpose. Their goal is to go back to, Christy Clark liberalism. British Columbians don't seem to want that, but keep trying.
Christy Clark knew how to throw the occasional elbow and stuff in a campaign.
And she also came up with the five.
I don't get the sense that Karen Kirkpatrick is going to run things the same way.
In terms of generating excitement, British Columbia's legislature, in terms of generating excitement, the BC NDP have dropped 2 new bills this week. One of them is to generate, clean energy in the north with the North Coast transmission line. That's me trying to segue here. I actually didn't read this bill, so I don't fully still understand why we need a bill to build power lines. But this is something they've talked about quite a bit, and the importance of building these power lines. I'm supportive of building power lines. But yeah, the bill is before the legislature now.
Yeah, well, the bigger question for me isn't why you'd pass legislation to do a project. It's not being uncommon, to pass a bill about, whatever. And it is to help it along. It's why the province went to all the trouble of creating a dedicated speedy process if you could just, do it on a case-by-case basis in legislation already.
I think looking at this press release, there's a few extra things this does do. It does expedite construction, which is what we have those earlier bills for. But this one also regulates what the electricity can be used for, or at least prioritizes it. So it talks about, quote, ensuring electricity is available for sectors that produce jobs, generate public revenue, and have the greatest opportunity to decarbonize, including mining, upstream natural gas, LNG, and manufacturing, as well as they are enabling a process for emerging sectors such as data centers, AI, and hydrogen to grow in a manner that results in the greatest benefit to people of BC and the economy. So, yes, it will make transmission line be built faster, but they are doing things like permanently banning cryptocurrency in mines in BC while also creating a regulatory path to enable AI data centers.
I mean, a regulatory path is one way to talk about it, but also they're basically create a tier structure for how BC Hydro should prioritize stuff, and it really is very resource and heavy on that one. It's leaning into the old economy rather than the new one, which for a province that was looking to diversify its economics structure and one that's, I think has visions of being less of a resource-heavy economy, does kind of seem to be a little backwards.
Well, it does have the data center provisions.
Yeah, which are placed below mining in the priority list.
It's on the list. I think the way they would try to frame it is the mining is to support the manufacture of high-tech materials and green materials that are needed. Those will mostly be manufactured in other countries, but no party in Canada is really talking about building manufacturing again at this point. Hopefully soon, but I don't know.
I wouldn't say that. Like, we did have the Liberal Party throw $13 billion at an auto plant. Now, that plant just announced they were going to shutter production, but, it's not like the industrial policy button hasn't been smashed a bunch. It just tends not to be all that productive a policy endeavor in practice.
So it's an interesting bill focused on a power line, but also directing power. The other bill that got dropped this week is changes to the Employment Standard Act that will allow employees to take as much as 27 weeks of unpaid job protected leave to undergo medical treatment and recovery. So basically, new serious illness or injury leave that largely hasn't existed or has been insufficient in British Columbia. And they are saying this brings us in line with several other provinces. Seems good.
It's nice. Not much to say.
It's good to not lose your job when you are in the hospital.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I'm a little curious to see how it's going to interact with employers needing to actually have those roles get done. Because that's a pretty long time to have someone out, and then bring someone on who to do that. Do they then get let go when the person comes back a year later?
Medical leave and parental leave backfill employment is pretty common already and well established. So I think the hardest part is always small businesses and smaller employers. Large companies can manage this, and there's specific
when
rules
you
that
have
are
a
harder.
giant workforce and shuffle some stuff around. The smaller ones that's going to be the challenge.
But this it points out already exists in Ontario, Manitoba, Quebec, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland and Labrador, and even Saskatchewan is going to have a similar leave soon. So it's manageable. Very NDP kind of legislation to beef up worker protections. Not the major reform that's going to get anyone excited, but is something that will help people. So I'm pretty positive on that. Let's jump to the federal scene, where the federal Liberals are also introducing some bills. I don't think we need to talk about the bill that allows the UK to join the TPP.
I do have some geography questions on how the UK is getting into the Trans-Pacific Partnership, but it's probably not worth digging into now.
It's all one ocean, Scott. It's all one ocean. That's how it works. The more interesting bill, C-14, is their long-awaited crime bill, the bail bill. The people are going to get jail, not bail now, as Pierre Poilievre has been trying to make a thing.
The Conservatives introduced their own private members bill version of this a couple of weeks back, but
that was never going to pass.
The Liberals introduced one that is a little less rhymey in its title.
Yes, it is called the Act to Amend the Criminal Code, the Youth Justice, the Act. It's called an Act to Amend the Criminal Code, the Youth Criminal Justice Act, and the National Defense Act, (bail and sentencing), or the Bail and Sentencing Reform Act for short. It's a big bill. I'm not going to pretend to have read all of its 84 sections.
Yeah, this comes after a long period of frustration on a lot of mayors and premiers about the bail system and its release of chronic repeat offenders back on to the streets, people getting released and then committing subsequent crimes, and basically a failure to protect the public safety in how the bail system has worked in recent years.
Things that have been backed up by anecdotal stories across the media, but that we don't actually have hard data on, as the Canadian Civil Liberties Association has been hammering this week. We don't have data on how many people get out on bail. We don't know how many people on bail commit crimes. We're just going off vibes here, and the vibes have been bad.
I would not say that. There have been a lot of documented cases of...
Yes, there has been a plural of anecdote.
Well, when a bridge collapses, when a building falls down, nobody knows. Well, most buildings stay up and most bridges don't collapse. So, we don't have to actually look at where things are going wrong because overall they're pretty safe. Now, that is a way to get more engineering failures. And similarly, if you don't look at where things are going wrong in the criminal justice system, you are going to get more failures in the criminal justice system. Part of the reason why flying is so much more safer than driving is because when there's an airplane crash, that gets investigated and changes get made in response to that rather than just kind of putting fingers in the ears, talking about aggregate numbers and then going forward on it as if nothing needs to get fixed at all.
Although airplanes and bridges don't have charter rights and the presumption of innocence, which are undermined when you lock someone up before they have been convicted.
Yeah, and there's also a need to balance public safety. Just this week, there was in Ontario, a woman was murdered by her former partner who was on bail despite having a long criminal history and pending arrest for or pending charges for violent crime. A person is dead because the bail system failed to adequately protect the public. A similar thing happened in Kelowna back in July. People are dying because the bail system is not effective on this, and there needs to be changes to address that.
And crime is also at its lowest point in quite a long time, and
yeah, that doesn't bring back the dead people.
I guess you're right that yes, if we do lock everyone up, no crime can happen. So tell me,
how about we just lock up the people that have a proven track record of committing a lot of crimes?
What does the bill do?
There's a...
Roughly, obviously.
Yeah, basically there's a few different things it does, but basically creates reverse onus provisions where for certain crimes, the person has to prove they're not a danger to the public. It provides judges some more direction in terms of how to balance public safety and what they call the principle of restraint here. Basically, you shouldn't be unnecessarily punitive or unnecessarily restrictive on it. Back in, I think it was 2020, the Trudeau government amended the criminal code to actually create a much stronger presumption of release, and that has led to cases where people get arrested, breach their bail conditions, commit more crimes, get put back out on bail, and just continue the cycle while the charges are pending in the background on that. Specifically, the reverse onus provisions are going to apply to motor vehicle theft involving violence, motor vehicle theft for criminal organization, extortion involving violence, breaking and entering a dwelling house, certain offenses related to trafficking of people, human smuggling, or certain offenses which an accused has choked, suffocated, or strangled a complainant. That one I think would have actually covered the case in Kelowna a few months ago. Add the number and gravity of outstanding charges against an accused for a judge to consider whether or not to release bail, and whether it's necessary to maintain the confidence of the administration of justice, which has very much been undermined by the current bail approach. It spans circumstances in which releases for the accused can be canceled, which also good. and additionally, they're going to change some sentencing parameters with respect to adding aggravated factors for repeat violent offenses, offenses against first responders, retail theft, and mischief to property. And add consecutive sentence for provisions for violent repeat offenses, motor vehicle thefts, and breaking and entering, which is interesting. Traditionally, the Liberals have opposed consecutive sentences where, if someone commits like 4 to 5 crimes and gets charged for all of them, the sentences are traditionally served simultaneously. So, in practice, that only means the most serious one gets an actual consequence and all the others aren't. But traditionally, the Liberals have taken the view that sentences should be served consecutively rather than concurrently. So this is a kind of interesting departure on their part.
I think have the Liberals been strong on that? I know the courts have struck down famously consecutive life sentences.
Yeah, to date, I mean, that was how the Sean Fraser, when he was introducing this, said, yeah, we're pretty sure this is not going to run afoul of it because these are not for life sentences.
Yeah, I think
on that
court might look badly if your bill requires, say, a sentence that exceeds a life sentence. Like, say you're charged with 8 minor theft or moderate theft things or something that adds up to more than life. That's where a court might go, that seems excessive based on that. But otherwise, it's probably fine for a few consecutive sentences because assault and theft and these things can add up. It is different to do multiple things.
Yeah, you should basically, your most serious crime should basically not mean you don't get any consequences for all the other crimes you do. So to me, it makes a lot of sense to add this.
I think, I'm not a criminal lawyer. I think some of this stuff exists already within judges' purview, and what is happening with this bill is it's basically saying we are going to make it required. And, sometimes that's valid and sometimes that oversteps. And I expect we'll get the charter statement from the government going, yeah, this is all great. And that's going to kind of show how charter statements are just the government patting itself on its back and finding a way to justify anything it does. Maybe this bill is constitutional, but I don't trust the government to tell me that. Right? I don't trust any government to tell me their bill is constitutional, because why would they say it's not? Even Quebec says Bill 21 is constitutional, but they needed to put the notwithstanding clause in there because they don't trust the Canadian courts to believe it to be so.
Yeah, alternatively, right, they're basically using a provision of the Constitution to make it constitutional in that case. But circling back to the bill, also going to bring some amendments to the Youth Criminal Justice Act. A lot of these ones kind of surprised me in that I was surprised they weren't already just the law, but they're going to clarify that violent offenses, among other things, include when the offense causes bodily harm, and provide that a time a young person spends unlawfully at large does not count towards time served in youth custody, which, how is that not already the case? You're not serving a sentence if you're on the run.
Counterpoint, maybe you are.
What?
Canadian law is a weird one where, because it's common law, a lot of things may just be in the court or in jurisprudence, but weren't ever written down. And I'm going to hope some of this is just, we needed to write some stuff down. But, I don't know. We're not criminal lawyers, so we don't know the justification for some of these versus otherwise. It's in the hate crime bill, they're defining what hatred is. And it's that does make sense to put in the law, but the definition they're using just comes from the Supreme Court of Canada.
Mm-hmm. And finally, with the Youth Criminal Justice Act, they're also going to allow police officers to publish identifying information about young persons when there's an imminent danger to public safety, which I guess the current law does not allow, and basically would require a judge to sign off previously, but that obviously creates issues with the imminent portion of it.
Mm-hmm.
Which, seems like a reasonable... I'm sure the boundaries of that are eventually going to get litigated at some point, but in principle, seems pretty fine.
Yeah, there's also a couple small changes to the National Defense Act that I think largely just bring those into similar... I'm looking at the bill itself in similar provision with the rest of the bill, so...
for the military justice system.
Yeah, requires court martials to give primary consideration to denunciation and deterrence of offenses involving criminal organizations. Do love the idea of military officers being involved in crime rings and organized crime, which probably exists.
I don't think this is... might not be the... To me, the thing that jumped out at me wasn't so much crime rings as it's some of the extremist organizations that come up every now and then.
Yep.
On that.
And there's also going to be new aggravating circumstances for repeat violent offenses against first responders and stealing for commercial purposes and certain property offenses. And
I'm curious on the I guess the repeat violent offending thing makes sense in that they're aligning it with it, but that's the sort of thing that gets you kicked out of the military. You wouldn't necessarily think you needed to add that, but I guess it just aligning all the various laws with the same direction makes sense.
Yeah, I think what's going to be interesting to follow with this bill is how the opposition parties position and respond. I did do a quick poke around. The Conservatives have only said, we're so happy to see this bill, but we're going to take our time and study it. And I'm sure they'll come forward with some amendments. I don't know where the Bloc will land. They're always an enigma. The NDP will likely oppose, as will Elizabeth May. And, the Liberals need a dance partner to get this passed. So do the Conservatives come forward with a lot of amendments? Do some of those get passed? And if they don't get passed, does the bill itself still move forward? I guess that's the open question.
I can't... as much as I'm sure the Conservatives are inclined to oppose for the sake of opposing, there's a very strong feeling among Conservatives that these measures are beyond overdue, and that it's kind of being a little unconscionable that the government hasn't addressed them before now. So, just on that front, I think they are going to ensure that this thing passes. Whether or not they're, coming out in force for it's a different thing. But and I would expect to see a bunch of amendments on this. But by and large, the Conservatives are probably going to be fairly supportive of it, and there'll probably be some grandstanding about how they should have just passed the Conservatives' private member bill. But not expecting a huge amount of strong opposition beyond, maybe a little symbolic stuff.
Bluster is his modus operandi, and Pierre Poilievre has had a rough couple days, which might make him, fall back into old habits. Kind of pivoting to our next set of stories, which dates back to last week when it came out that he was on a podcast where he was accusing the RCMP of covering up and sort of burying charges against Justin Trudeau over the Aga Khan scandal we covered.
I had forgotten about that
7-8 years ago now.
Yeah, and I mostly remember that scandal for being concerned about ethics breaches more than a criminal breach.
Yeah, and if you go charitable to him for some reason, there is a line in the criminal code that public officials should not accept effectively bribes or lucrative vacation benefits, I guess. And so there was an RCMP investigation briefly, but they decided it wasn't worth it, and the ethics commissioner went forward more thoroughly. But his comments, I don't have them up in front of me, were rather strong on this podcast. And that drew some level of headline of, what is he talking about? Why is he disparaging the RCMP? There's lots of reasons to disparage the RCMP.
Yeah, I was trying to say, the RCMP has had no shortage of critics from across the political spectrum. There's been a few of the reactions to this have been kind of a little pressures on that front, but yeah, it's not the you as a politician can criticize the RCMP in good faith on it.
Mm-hmm.
The calling it despicable that the RCMP did not end up arresting and having sending the prosecutors to charge.
How dare the cops not arrest the prime minister?
Yeah, that's the part that's a bit much on this.
So he has backpedaled on that a bit, but it's also led to a series of whisper rumors that are getting up to the point where Althea Raj is talking about caucus members who are starting to speak to her or speak out about him. Who was this who wrote the
Dimitri Soudis,
yeah,
Harper staffer, published in the Star basically a piece being rather critical of Pierre Poilievre and how he's, particularly this last outburst, but kind of just the leadership to date, which a lot of people have tried to read stuff into. There's been questions about whether or not Harper had given him the nod to do this, and this was an implied Stephen Harper position on it,
which is real 2001-ish take down Stockwell Day energy.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna say, if you're going to launch a takedown of a conservative leader, you don't do it in the Toronto Star.
Maybe they tried the National Post first and they didn't want to publish it.
I would have, even if the National Post wouldn't have published it, which the National Post publishes plenty of conservatives being critical of how how elected conservatives have conducted themselves. There's been no shortage of op-eds in the past couple months about how Doug Ford isn't really a true conservative and stuff. So it's not that the National Post runs defense for particular conservative leaders or even conservatives generally, but you definitely don't do it in the Star if you want conservatives to really pay attention to it and internalize it into their own thinking about whether or not the party needs a change.
Yeah, I think what will be interesting is if the rumors of 5 MPs being dissatisfied, as was published by Radio Canada, turns out to be anything. What would make it easier for Mark Carney to get his budget passed, as apparently they're worried about, would be a couple floor crossers, or even just dropping out. I can't think quite of who it would be.
Yeah, I really can't either.
I was trying to speculate. There's a few moderate. There's probably a bunch in Quebec I can't think of.
Yeah, but I don't know. These days with how polarized things are, I just can't see people leaving the Conservative Party to go to the Liberals.
The only ones I can maybe think of if I stretch is Scott Aitchison, Scott Reid, or Dan Albus, but even those three seem pretty committed to the brand.
Yeah, I don't think Aitchison's going to do it at all. That's not my read on the guy.
Mm-hmm. It's Mike Chong is a moderate in the party relative, but he's been so involved for so long that I can't see him leaving.
Yeah, and he's a pretty staunch conservative. Yeah, it's I think the tone certain politicians take on the right can obscure just how much agreement there is on kind of principles and directions on, the big questions and whatnot. And, even if the bombastic populist energy isn't those politicians' approach or preference on it, they're still at the end of the day conservatives.
But so is Mark Carney to some extent. Like, he's officially liberal, but he is far
this is like
more
a
of a
really,
conservative liberal than Trudeau ever was.
Last 15 years view of it. There's long been a, business liberal Paul Martin wing of the party. They tended to trade it back and forth between that wing and the more left-leaning, socially focused, economically redistributive parts of the Liberal Party, and it's kind of an aberration in how much that disappeared in the Trudeau era. So in many ways, like, Mark Carney is actually just kind of a return to form on that. Like, I know NDP types always like to accuse the Liberals and the Conservatives of being the same party, but yeah, I don't doubt Mark Carney's sincerity as a Liberal, but it is also kind of refreshing to see that side of the Liberal Party back after it's been absent for so long.
I guess time will tell how things shake out, both in the Conservative Party, federally, provincially, and how this budget comes in a couple weeks.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting though. Like, Mark Carney yesterday did a primetime address to the nation, which is very rare.
Did you catch it? I didn't.
I did not. I only saw the coverage of it. Ended up having to work late last night, so definitely missed that. But yeah, it's like 9/11. I think the pandemic. You look at the past like 30 years of those, and it's really cases of like world events kind of thing that leads to it, which makes this one noteworthy because it is more of a we're conditioning the budget stuff about how there's going to be sacrifices and economic transformation, which, doing that to a room full of, young Canadians, the Bloc is out there pounding the table about how you could not possibly touch OAS is a real, like, symbolism thing, but it was kind of interesting on that front in terms of just that this was the approach Carney took to do some of the budget prep.
Yeah, he's really trying to set the ground before this budget comes, but yeah, I'm curious how he manages to win a dance partner over at this point. I want to see what's in the thing at this point and who's willing to help him make it a reality, or if he's willing to just say screw it all and go to an election and try for a majority.
Yeah, I'm kind of real curious on this one, on what's going to be the in the budget, and just, is Carney willing to kill any of the sacred cows of Canadian policy that are, have, client groups that are real interested in maintaining them, but are actually economically harmful to the country as a whole. And I don't know. I hope so, but whether or not that's actually going to happen, particularly if he needs the support of another party, is interesting. But that was kind of the promise of Mark Carney, in part, in addition to stand up to the U.S. was like, we're going to fix some of the long-term problems here, so we can be more independent, stand on our own 2 feet. And I'm going to be real curious to see if the tough but necessary correctives are actually going to be in that budget.
I just like Yves-Francois Blanchet, who was asked about House Leader Steve McKinnon, who was worried as he told the media about it passing. Blanchet told the media, instead of sending ministers in the hallways of Parliament to cry about the fact we do not help them, which is not our job is to help Quebecers, they should say, okay, we will consider what you ask. And it's not that I necessarily agree with what Blanchet asks, it's just that man is the king of one-liners, and I'm going to be a little sad when he eventually retires as bloc leader, for the comedy. The loss of comedy when he leaves. Not because, yeah, like I said, a lot of things I disagree with him quite vehemently on, but, oh, that's a good line. And that has been Politicoast. Find links to everything we talked about at politicos.ca. Support the show and get access to our exclusive Slack channel at patreon.com/politicoast. Our intro music is Beautiful British Columbia by Serge Plotnikov. Politicoast is a production of Leg and Boot Media. Audio editing provided by Jesse Woodward at listener-supported CHLY 101.7 FM in Nanaimo. Learn more at chly.ca.